Recording live in the lucky number 7 lounge, this is Dine, Drink, Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller on a Budget, and you have stumbled across episode number 77, where we're going to bring you a tasty drink and all kinds of Vegas news. But before we could do any of that, we've got to bring in the founder of Dine, Drink, Travel and Dine, Drink, Vegas himself. Yes, of course, I can only be speaking of the high roller, formerly of the High Plains, the king of comps, the leader in the luxury lounge, the Alabama slammer, the man who is always waiting on that limo to carry him away to his next luxurious Las Vegas destination, or sometimes a really nice spot in Ireland. I can only be talking about Bill. Good evening, Bill. How are you, sir?
I am trying to survive 3 more work days until I get to go to Ireland. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. It's a little unusual. Normally, we record on either a Tuesday or Wednesday and drop the episode on Friday. But, Bill, you've got some travel plans. I know we'll get a trip review when you get back in a couple of weeks. So we're recording early this week, and we'll drop early. So we're recording on a Sunday. We'll drop probably Wednesday. There will be an episode the following week if everything goes according to plan, but Bill won't be available. But I'll do a solo show. We've all been 13, so we'll take care of that. But in the meantime, let's focus on the episode at hand. Bill, the drink of the day is usually my domain, but this week you wanted to step in and you pushed yourself in 2 directions that you swore you wouldn't go. Why don't you tell the listeners all about our drink of the day?
So, listeners, for those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. We are so glad you are here. You can really help the podcast out by clicking the like or heart or whatever the button is, wherever you listen to this, and leaving a comment, sharing it with friends. And for those of you who've been with us for a while, thank you so much. And you will recall that in episode 11, I said some deeply unpleasant things to John. And I stand by all of those things, because John went to an earlier large language model and said, he was talking about how the firewall for MGM had collapsed, said, create me a drink, but based on an electronic firewall collapsing. And whatever it was, I guess ChatGPT came up with a drink called the Firewall Fizz, which we to this day call Smurf Barf because it looked and tasted terrible. It was everything that was wrong with alcohol. The second thing, which is true, is that John's been telling me for years that there are scotches out there that I will like. And I've said, maybe, but there's always going to be a bourbon or an Irish out there that I would prefer, right? So what I did was I tried to blend those 2 streams. I tried to come up with a Scotch cocktail that I would enjoy, but went back to an AI to create it. But this time I gave it a whole lot more specific instructions. And I went to a fairly advanced version of Google Gemini, which is a significantly better AI than the LLM that John was using 2 or 3 years ago, whenever that was. And here's the prompt I entered. And I guess the first thing is you've got to give it pretty specific directions. I said, please help me design a cocktail featuring Scotch. As part of that, please suggest a Scotch that normally costs less than $50 in the US. I strongly dislike peated Scotch. I drink bourbon, particularly where wheat is a secondary ingredient. I also enjoy several Irish whiskeys. I'd like some Scotch with a low peat content, but almost always find a bourbon or an Irish I would prefer. And then Gemini asked me some questions. We went back and forth for a while. And eventually, what Google Gemini recommended was a Scotch called Monkey Shoulder, which, John, am I correct that is a blended Scotch?
Yes, but we want to get really specific here. So there are 2 types of blended Scotches. One, the one most people think of a blended Scotch is where you may have Scotch from multiple, malted Scotch whiskey from multiple distilleries, but they're going to blend that with a neutral grain spirit whiskey. And basically that's vodka, right? So that is often what is meant by a blend. There's aged and malted barley Scotch whiskey along with a neutral grain spirit. A lot of Canadian whiskeys do the same thing. Monkey Shoulder is a malt blend. So Monkey Shoulder is owned by one of the big conglomerates. They own several big distilleries, and Monkey Shoulder is a blend of their malt whiskeys. So it's a higher quality product and a more flavorful product than a blended Scotch that's using a neutral grain spirit because it has multiple malt whiskeys. Although, it's not going to taste like a single malt because you have several different malted whiskeys in there.
More information than I needed. But okay, so it's not a single malt Scotch, and it said that if I couldn't get that, it recommended Glenmorangie 10, and if I mispronounce it, we're just going to have to live with that, or Aberfeldy 12. And the cocktail it came up with is called the Mamie Taylor, which includes 2 ounces of your chosen Scotch, and I did in fact use Monkey Shoulder, 3/4 ounce of fresh lime juice. And listeners, for those of you who are new to the podcast, one of the few drinking related things on which John and I religiously agree is that if you're going to use a citrus juice, squeeze fresh citrus juice anytime you possibly can. 4 to 6 ounces of high quality ginger beer and 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. And I'm looking forward to hearing from John how many dashes he interpreted 2 to be. But then you put it all together in a highball glass. By the way, John, I want you to be proud of me. I now own proper highball glasses instead of just the rocks glasses I had been drinking out of. You put it all together in a highball glass, maybe a copper mug with a lime wedge or a piece of candied ginger. So, John, before we talk about what we think of this drink, what else should I say about the process of creating it?
So this is it's a pretty straightforward highball. Like most highballs, recipes will normally tell you to make it in your mixing glass. But honestly, and by the way, I didn't have the tall highball or Collins glasses until recently. I bought those 2 weeks ago. So we both have new glassware, which is nice. You can also just build these right in the glass. You want to stir them, not shake them, because you have a carbonated thing and you don't want to shake a carbonated beverage. But yeah, they're pretty straightforward. This is just a step above making like a rum and coke or a branch water. Those are all highballs, carbonated beverage and spirit. You can add a few other things if you want, but that's the essence of it.
All right, fair enough then. So I know what I think about this drink, John, but you're going to be able to describe it in much more technical detail. And let me back up. The Google Gemini gave me tasting notes, right? Like Gemini knows that I record this podcast. It gave me things I could say about it. I'm not going to say those. I would rather rely on my Scotch drinking human friend. John, what are you tasting in this drink?
So I'm going to start with, so by the way, listeners, I made 2. And one of them is made with the Monkey Shoulder. My ginger beer is Reed's Zero Sugar. Reed's is pretty good. I prefer Fever Tree, but I got the Beatus, so I buy Reed's because it's zero sugar, and it is a solid product. My Angostura was more like 4 or 5 dashes. I didn't go crazy. I will say that on the nose, you do get ginger and baking spices because we have ginger beer and Angostura. You do get citrus of the lime juice. Weirdly, I'm also picking up orange and honeysuckle, and I think that has to do with the flavor profiles of the Monkey Shoulder. If you've ever had an Irish mule where you basically, because this is basically a take on a mule. If you've ever had an Irish mule on St. Patrick's Day with Jameson, or if you're Protestant Bushmills, this is very similar to that. It has more flavor. The whiskey's a little more pronounced than when you do this with the base level Jameson. I think Monkey Shoulder has a more developed flavor. On the sip, though, the Scotch really does get lost. If you do this with an unpeated Scotch, the ginger ale and the Angostura are going to be the dominant flavors. In this sense, it's like a slightly more flavorful Moscow Mule. There's more going on here than if you did this with vodka, but the Scotch is definitely taking a back seat. Now, if you're trying to get into Scotch, I could see how you would do that. Let me pause there, Bill, because you may want to have some things to say, and then we'll talk about Bachelor number 2 that I made.
So I taste all the things you're tasting, but I can pick out the Scotch, and I certainly could earlier in the drink. I, like you, I used a sugar-free ginger beer. I used the Q low calorie or whatever it was,
Yeah.
which is an excellent ginger beer. And I wonder what this would have been like with actual sugar. I can actually taste the base spirit underneath, and the Scotch is fine. Like, I don't hate it. I just don't know why I would pour the Scotch instead of pouring an Irish, or I don't think I would put bourbon with lime juice, but yeah, instead of some other whiskey. The thing that I'm picking up, it's not peat at all, of course, but it's almost like a smokiness, right? I'm tasting something like smoke that is different from all of the bourbons I drink. So since I almost certainly just used the wrong whiskey word, John, what is it that I am tasting?
I'm not really sure, Bill. I do sometimes wonder, and eventually I will rope you into doing a blind tasting to see if you can truly spot the Scotch from the Irish. I think you have a mental association of smoke with Irish whiskey. I mean, there is a blended element. They do make this. This is aged in a first refill bourbon barrel, meaning that Scotch producers will buy an old bourbon barrel and reuse it a bunch. But with Monkey Shoulder, it has been aged in a barrel that the last thing in it was the bourbon, and this is only the second time it's been filled. There's a little bit of barrel character to this, but to me, it reads more like vanilla than smoke. It could be that you're super sensitive to smoke in a way that I'm not. There are some ways that I have a more sophisticated palate than you, but there are times when you seem to pick up on particularly flavors you don't like. You could pick those up a mile away. If there's something you don't like, you have radar for it. So it may be that. But I do wonder, we need to do a blind, and I really want to do a triangle test where you have two samples that are one thing and one sample that's another to see if you really can tell the difference between Scotch and Irish. Because I wonder how much of this is in your head.
I suppose that's possible. I'm tasting something, and I may be using the wrong word for it, but no, there is distinctly a something there which isn't present in bourbon. So, the other thing that I will say about the process with this is that I kind of enjoyed the back and forth with the AI in customizing things. Like, I think this is as much as I'm going to wind up liking a Scotch. And I just this is all in my head. I just looked it up on Google. The phrase I entered was smoke and monkey shoulder. And it says aroma features sweet smoke similar to a chimney fire with undertones of orange peel.
Yeah, and I guess to me, I'm so used to really heavily peated scotches that I don't really catch that. Also, I was drinking mezcal earlier, so it might be that I'm having a hard time picking up on more subtle versions of smoke because mezcal.
Yeah, whereas this is still fairly early in my evening. But yeah, it's a drink I enjoy, and I think I may have misspoken about Scotch earlier. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that for the same price and in the same bar, there is almost always going to be a bourbon or an Irish that I would prefer, right? And so there's no reason to go there. But I think what I'm going to do, because I've got most of a bottle of Monkey Shoulder sitting on my kitchen counter, I'm going to go through this experiment a few more times to see what I can come up with that I enjoy. And next time I'm going to try to not hide it underneath so much tart citrus, because, I mean, to your point, the lime and the citrus is, and everything which is in the ginger beer is absolutely what this drink leads with.
Right. I think you should try an old fashioned and a Rob Roy, which is essentially a Manhattan, just sub out Scotch, because I know you like both of those cocktails. And I think an old fashioned and a Rob Roy would be an interesting experiment. Did you drink the Monkey Shoulder neat at any point?
I think I had a sip of it, but I can't honestly say.
Okay.
I almost certainly, I know I smelled it. I think I sipped it, but it's been a few days, man. I don't remember.
So I want to move on to my contestant number 2, because Bill, you do not like peated scotches. I picked up a bottle of Lafroig, which is the most intensely peated scotch on the market. It smells like bacon and camphor-phenique. Anybody ever get a cut when you were young? You remember that particular medical product from West Texas wound treatment in your childhood, Bill?
Man, I've got some terrible memories of that.
Yeah, so I made one with Lafroig, and in this particular case, the dominant aroma is Lafroig. And on the sip, the ginger and the citrus and the Lafroig dance together. And you just described sweet smokiness, like a citrus sweet smokiness with the monkey shoulder. That is what I'm getting with the Lafroig version. So I will say to my Scotch loving friends out there, normally I would never think to make a mule with Lafroig. If you like peated scotches, do that. And I will say when I first mixed it and I took a sip, it wasn't that great, but I've now let it sit for a minute and let the ice dilute and let the flavors blend. They're both good. I would not make the monkey shoulder one again, even though I love monkey shoulder, but because there are cheaper Irish products that will give me almost the same drink. And I could save money. I don't need to use monkey shoulder for that, but I would do the Lafroig again in a heartbeat. And I think I'd like to try this out with, say, Johnny Walker Double Black, some other smoky products that aren't too expensive, because I'm not doing this with my Lagavulin 16.
No.
We're not mixing that.
So one last question before we move on, John. I am on the Monkey Shoulder webpage right now and drawing some inspiration. Would you support me in my goal of making a Monkey Shoulder Old Fashioned later on in the evening?
Yes. Yeah. I think I may have said that earlier, but if not, yes. Yeah. An Old Fashioned or a Rob Roy. I think those are the two cocktails you should absolutely try this in. Fair. And like I said, I really do think there ought to be like a blind taste test between this and Yellow Spot, which is the Irish I would put this in the closest proximity to.
All right, fair. Well, is it time to move on and talk about news?
Yes, it is. And for our first news story of the night, we begin with a massive breaking news story from The Plaza. The Plaza are partnering with the YouTube channel Vegas Live Casino to live stream table games in their smoke-free gambling space. The broadcast will stream Sunday through Thursday from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday and Saturdays from 6 p.m. to midnight. There will only be 3 tables in this space, and it's said on the Plaza's website starting at 6 p.m. nightly, but if they're going to do if they're going to do streaming on Sunday through Thursday at 1 o'clock, that doesn't seem right. Only 3 games on offer: blackjack, baccarat, and European roulette. The smoke-free live stream tables will feature $25 table minimums. The maximums are $2,000 to $3,000, depending on which game you're playing. But for those who want the thrill of having their gambling session live streamed on YouTube, it may prove to be irresistible. Additionally, slot players can also sign up to live stream themselves on the channel. And Bill, I'm going to ask you to put the link in the show notes. So, Bill, let's talk about this. Not that long ago, you and I have both had the experience, actually, of not being allowed to film in a Vegas property within the last year. Not that long ago, that was standard practice. If you were taking photographs or videos on the casino floor and staff noticed you, you were going to be, usually politely, but you were going to be asked to refrain from that activity. They've gotten more comfortable with content creators doing their own videos, but generally not at live tables. That's a no-no. I try to catch a short video of one of the last dancing dealer sessions at the Golden Gate, and the bartender's like, no, they're playing blackjack. So there's a taboo about recording table games. Plaza seems to not mind in this instance. Bill, would you have any desire to sit at that table?
No, I don't want cameras on me when I'm in Vegas for my Bible study and letting the Holy Spirit move within me. So I can't imagine that would be fun. In terms of why they're okay with it, I mean, they control the video, right? Like, they're the ones who are going to make the money of it. They can stop any of the negative connotations. And if the players at the table aren't allowed to use their phones, then the players at the table aren't going to get any signals from the video. Right. So it's really a very low risk thing for the Plaza. That actually makes sense to me. I would sure rather not be on their YouTube channel.
That's fair. Would you watch this at all?
I mean, I would watch it briefly. And I mean, if I was so mathematically, I understand all the reasons that this is terrible. But if I'm in the frame of mind I sometimes get into in Vegas, I might watch it to see if a table was hot. Yeah. Right? Like watch it from the bar, be like, everybody's lost for the last hour, start walking over there and wait for the table to turn. Now, again, I understand how chance works, and the previous bet does nothing to control the next bet. But, you know, that wouldn't be the worst piece of math I'd ever committed in Las Vegas. So, yeah, I would, under some circumstances, I would watch it.
Yeah, I definitely will. I was going to log in earlier, but I got busy with other things. I will say that I'm one of those weirdos. I will watch slot play on YouTube. I don't know why, but I do. I watch Travel Ruby does slots. There's Cowboy slots. Brian Christopher, although sometimes he's a little much for me. He's a little over the top personality wise. Pompsy and his wife do some slot videos. Like I like watching people gamble. It scratches the itch when I can't be in the casino. So I'm curious to see this. I will say it's just another example. You know, the Plaza is the only casino that has a podcast, and they've been doing that since the pandemic. They actually started doing that before you and I did. They also have a much bigger audience than you and I do, but I think that has something to do with their casino and we're not. But I think it's pretty cool to see the Plaza moving into this space on social media.
I am deeply intrigued, and I think that's the tag I need to put in the show notes is to the people at the Plaza. Well, Scott at Vital Vegas is also reporting on the closing of Ace One Walk at TI and LPM, which is a French bistro at Cosmo. Now, given that this podcast is largely, though not exclusively, about food options for tourists, and that we've never mentioned them before, let alone dined at them, that should suggest that these closures really aren't Greek tragedies for the Vegas dining scene. Though we do sincerely hope that those who will be out of work soon due to these closures land new and better jobs pretty quickly. I guess that raises a question for me, though, John. How much pruning of mediocre dining options should we expect during this downturn in Vegas traffic?
So if there's a silver lining to this cloud, I hope it is this. I do hope some of the really mid dining experiences that people stumble into because they're close by, but they're not very good. Listen, we say all the time that Vegas is the best foodie city in America, and I stand by that. You can get anything in Las Vegas, and you can find a superb version of any cuisine in Las Vegas. There's also a lot of tourist traps that sell bad food or mediocre food. They're just not that good. And on the Strip, you pay a premium for some not that good food. I don't want anybody to lose their job. I hope all the affected staff land on their feet. But yeah, I kind of hope this does thin the herd a little bit. And I kind of hope this teaches the operators in the casinos especially, they need to watch the price of their product and not gouge or, put themselves out of the market. But two, you are going to charge to a degree a premium on the Strip, even if the prices come down a bit. Make sure your product is worthy of the price.
Absolutely. And you should also avoid the BS fees that we've complained about on, I don't know, probably a dozen different episodes.
Yeah, amen. Amen
right.
to that.
Like if the price for a hamburger is $15 or $20, which is a lot of money for a hamburger, make that the price. Don't also charge me a $2 convenience fee plus a terminal access fee.
Right. Right. Yeah, I completely. Speaking of things that drive up prices, Scott and other people shared the news that the Wynn did in fact pay the ransom to the data hackers, just over $1 million in Bitcoin that we talked about last episode. So now, Bill, I know you said you wanted to circle around to this topic in our last episode. Do you have any thoughts about the Wynn going ahead and capitulating? And do you feel like they got off cheap compared to what other operators have been through?
So I do, in terms of whether they got off cheap, I don't know. I don't remember how much of the data was stolen. I can certainly imagine somebody trying to extort more. But if I'm the bad guy, I've got to make a choice, right? Like I would rather extort $100 million than $1 million. but the more I try to get from the casino, the more likely they are to fight it and come try to find me. And my guess is that the bad actors made the rational economic choice that if at $1 million, the Wynn would do precisely what they did, pay up, and then they would go away. So there's, I mean, I'm torn. On the one hand, I want to say that this is going to invite more attacks like this, but then again, I suspect those attacks are coming anyway.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit for a city that was basically built by the mob. It's almost like these hackers are playing the, hey, that's some nice data you got over there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it. It feels like that sort of shakedown at this point. They didn't go for broke. I'm sure it was under the insured threshold for the Wynn. But it is a reminder that a lot of times as tourists, and you and I have been guilty, we imagine in our mind what things ought to cost based on how we understand operational expenses. But there's a lot of hidden costs to doing business in Vegas. The labor market is more expensive. You have more union shops. Employees are better paid. That is expensive real estate. Certain ingredients are hard to get in the middle of the Nevada desert, like fresh seafood or anything that grows in wet climates. And then there's things like this. There are things that get sunk into the cost of your hotel room and your dining that it may not occur to you when you're like, why is this hamburger $25? I get that the Wynn paid it. I don't think they had a choice. But this is a reminder that some of the stuff we pay for when we go to Vegas is casino operators buying off con artists.
Absolutely. Well, in other news, according to Financial Times, shares in Caesars Entertainment have fallen to a 5-year low, and the company is weighing whether there's any takeover interest. Now, to be clear, there aren't specific active bids. They are weighing whether there is the interest there in being taken over. Although the story mentioned that they're weighing whether Tillman Fertitta, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast, might be one of the possible investors. Now, there are several other options also being considered, and it's entirely possible that no action will be taken. So, John, I want to go back to the Tillman Fertitta link here. His name keeps popping up, and he keeps not having a property on the Strip, right?
Yeah.
How long until he does?
I would like to see him. Now, he owns land and had the intention to build, but all the things that have happened, he was going to build a luxury resort, but with Fontainebleau and Resorts World struggling, and with the economy being what it is, he's paused. I hope he's thinking about making something more like the Golden Nugget, a mid-value property, not a dive, not a flop house, not a cheap low rent place, but not the Post Oak, not something super luxurious. I think he would be a great operator for the Strip. If he were to take over Caesars, that would be great. I sort of went on a rant last episode. I am a capitalist at heart, but I do think capitalism over the last few decades, starting in the 80s, has become beholden to short-term investors and hedge funds and liquidators who want to come in, milk a company for a quick profit and get out with no thought to the long-term health of the business or the impact on loyal customers. Having a true owner, not a corporate conglomerate, not a bunch of shareholders, having an owner, I think would be good for Caesars. I think it would take them back and right the ship. I would rather it be Derek Stevens than Tillman, but I don't know that the Stevens brothers have any desire to move on to the Strip. We do know that Ambassador Fertitta does, and if it goes that way, that's welcome news to me.
All right, fair enough. Well, then you know what? I hope all the workers wind up keeping jobs here, and I hope that some great properties keep operating one way or another.
All right, with our next story, and by the way, on the odd chance that Scott from Vital Vegas happens to be listening, I don't think he listens to our podcast. He will retweet our tweets. He's been very nice to us. I know some people don't like him. I've never had a bad encounter, but I don't think he listens to the podcast. But if he does, proof that occasionally Scott gets it wrong, Las Vegas Locally shared a picture of one of the escalators being installed at the A's Stadium, which is very quickly taking shape and rising on the Las Vegas Strip. at the home of the former Tropicana. Begging in Las Vegas locally had a good joke in there, begging tourists, please don't break these escalators. Nod to the fact that the escalators are always freaking broken. Bill, are you getting excited yet? Because this is happening.
I absolutely am. If I still lived in your city, I'd be even more excited because you live where the AA affiliate for the A's is,
Yeah.
so you can kind of maintain that connection. But even so, I want to see some baseball in Vegas. I want to have some reasons to go there. I can absolutely imagine that one year at Labor Day for the guys' trip, I mean, eventually the A's will be home that weekend. I am super excited about this, and I absolutely believe it happens, regardless of who happens to own the A's when they throw the first pitch.
Yeah, amen. I was talking to my wife earlier today. I really I'm a low roller, but I love the idea of staying over at New York, or MGM Grand, or I don't know, probably not the Dirty Castle, but staying in that area. And before I walk over to the stadium for the ball game, go down to the sports book, put, relatively low amount of money, somewhere between 30 and $50 on some proposition bets. Who hits the first home run? How many innings will the starting pitchers pitch for? Things like that to keep me interested in the game so that I have, a series of $3 to $5 bets on, I don't know, a dozen things happening in the game just to keep me plugged in for all 9 innings. I think it'd be a great, great night of entertainment in Vegas. And honestly, a baseball ticket in the nosebleeds, a beer and a hot dog, even at Vegas prices, and $30 worth of sports bet tickets, that's a pretty cheap night on the town in Vegas.
Yeah, no, I absolutely look forward to that. So, Food and Loathing in Las Vegas reported that the Las Vegas Distillery is going to serve a family-style dinner called the Midweek Supper Club every Wednesday from 3 to 8 in their Henderson tasting room. The tasting room is located in the locals' favorite area known as the Henderson Booze District. And John, I'm a little upset that you've never told me before that that's a place that exists. But the Henderson Booze District is home to this distillery along with breweries and bars aplenty. Our take, this is just more proof that if tourists just stick to the Strip and the Fremont Street experience, you're missing out on some unique Vegas food and beverage opportunities as the Vegas Valley continues to develop a local-centric dining scene that rivals any city in America. Food and Loathing notes that spots fill up quickly and suggests booking early. Locals get a steep discount, and I will close this news story with this, John. And it's another thing we've talked about a dozen times on this podcast. But Las Vegas is a real place where real people actually live. And I love getting to know more of those places which are slightly off the tourist path.
Yeah, especially because if you think about the amount of people who work in serious jobs in the food and beverage service industry on the Strip and downtown, that this has been going on for decades. You have hundreds, if not thousands of culinary employees, and some of them want to get out of the rat race of working in the tourist areas and create dining experience for locals, for their friends and their families. And even the ones working on the Strip and downtown want locals places to go. And I think the development of this culinary scene in Vegas off the Strip is marvelous for locals. But in these times when we're talking about how expensive Vegas can be for the tourist, there are some of these local places that the food quality is every bit as good as what you get on the Strip, and the prices are like your local Applebee's or Outback Steakhouse. I think if you're trying to save a few bucks and get off the beaten path, trying some local places is a good idea, which, Bill, brings me to the next story.
Go on.
Eater Vegas reported that longtime off-strip locals' favorite steakhouse, Bob Taylor's Ranch House, has won the 2026 James Beard America's Classics Award. The establishment, opened since 1955, features a steak menu that begins with a $37.99 12-ounce New York strip, up to the 32-ounce Diamond Jim Brady special at a low $82.99. As prices on the Strip skyrocket, steak cravers should look to local joints for better values. So, Bill, this is not that far from Red Rocks. Can you see a night, and we talked about Butcher and Thief, which also isn't very far away. Could you see a trip where we stay at Red Rocks and go eat steak at Red Rocks at Butcher, three steakhouse dinners in a row without breaking the bank?
I like everything about that except three steakhouse dinners in a row. John, we are both rapidly approaching our 29th birthday. And I don't know that eating that much steak ends well for either of us.
Well, they got chicken and pork. I mean, there's other things on the menu, but to have that experience that you could do 3 nights of a steak dinner in a row for about the same or less than you would pay at Prime at Bellagio, that's got an appeal to me.
That absolutely has an appeal. What I would do instead is replace Prime with one or two of those places, and then the other night go somewhere where they serve a vegetable.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
All right. Well, in music-related news, Vegas Publicity shared details on Metallica's upcoming October residency for 8 weekend nights at the Sphere. The Life Burns Faster residency features 2-night, no-repeat weekends, letting fans hear songs from 4 decades of the band's career, promising a different experience each of the 2 nights. Fans can buy single-night tickets, weekend tickets, VIP bundles, and even travel packages. And John, I am impressed with their ability to go through that many songs, right? Like the no repeat weekend, I think is the real killer hook here. I like Don't Love Metallica, but I could absolutely see going for one of these. How about you, John? Is this something that's interesting to you?
I'm not the world's biggest Metallica fan, but I do like the fact that they're doing these shows instead of Friday and Saturday back to back. There's Friday and Sunday. And there's an appeal to the fact that if you happen to be a Metallica fan, you get a break because let's be real, that's going to be a loud show, right?
What?
You might not want that 2 days in a row. Yeah, exactly. But to get this with the break in between and get a really deep dive into their musical catalog, I think that's really smart. For a casual fan like me, I probably pick a night. They're going to play some stuff I like either night. I don't know their deep catalog. I'm not a super huge Metallica fan. I know their hits. I know a few deep tracks, but I'm far from an expert. So for the hardcore fan, get the bundle, go to both. But for the casual fan, pick whichever night works best for you. They'll sell you a seat. I think I would do this.
So does that mean they're going to end their concert one of those nights without Enter Sandman?
Yeah. Different set list both nights. Yeah.
Huh. I think that changes the experience of what a Metallica concert is, but okay.
Yeah. Well, but I think that's kind of the point of doing a residency at a place like the Sphere and doing 2 shows in a weekend is it gives you a chance to give your fans something they're not going to get on your national or international one night in this town. You know, hello, Cleveland, that kind of a deal. I think that's the point of doing a residency at the Sphere is to give your fans something they won't get if you catch them in your hometown.
All right. Fair enough.
So we close tonight with our Vegas WTF story. We reported last week that elderly gentlemen Mayweather and Pacquiao have a 9-figure fight coming up in Las Vegas. The British tabloid The Daily Mail reported on a typical Floyd Mayweather night in Las Vegas. It's caviar all around, high-end whiskey and champagne, and $500 tips. However, he's also objected at the end of the evening to spending $90 on 2 boxes of fancy donuts. Apparently, there is a line to the amount of unreasonable money the man is willing to spend. Bill, if you had that kind of money, would you turn down the fancy donuts?
I don't know how they would pair with the champagne and caviar. I kind of appreciated the human touch that at the end of a long night of partying in Las Vegas, what the man wanted was a dang donut, right?
Yeah.
That made sense to me. 24 donuts for $90 is a lot of money, even for Las Vegas. But man, if you've just spent $10,000 or $20,000 on your evening, no, I don't think you notice $90 worth of donuts for you and your crew.
Yeah, that seems a little weird to me, although, you know, he could just cruise on down and get Pink Box. So
Yeah, and I can't remember where I saw the picture. I can't remember where it was, but yeah, it was an extravagant, night. They were having fun, and apparently that's just his thing. There are some points where you come to too much of an expense. And he hasn't gotten that $300 million payday yet, so maybe he doesn't have the $90.
Maybe so. He maxed his credit card out before the donuts arrived. Well, on that note, Bill, why don't you tell the listeners where they can find more Dine Drink Vegas and Dine Drink Travel content?
Folks, you can find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas, where we bring you short and focused videos to help you plan your next trip, something like 5 or 10 minutes on a specific hotel room or a particular restaurant. You can also find us on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel, where we bring you things like executive lounge reviews, including from the Las Vegas airport, airplane flights, and things like my trips to Vegas, and a little bit of the Las Vegas content. You can also find us on essentially every social media platform at Dine Drink Travel, but the most significant of those is where you can find John.
I'm at Dine Drink John, where I'm more than happy to talk to you about fine adult beverages, about coffee, about travel destinations, especially in Las Vegas or my home state of Texas, and even how the Cowboys are rolling into this offseason in a way that fills me full of hope, only to know that it's going to end in a 500 season. We thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you've got a friend planning a trip to Las Vegas and they could use our sage wisdom, or a mortal enemy that hates listening to old fat white Southern guys drink and talk and drink and talk, either way, please share our podcast with them and go ahead and repost it on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever you happen to hang out on social media. That'll help us grow an audience so we can keep bringing you this fantastic top shelf and, oh, by the way, free Las Vegas travel content. Thank you once again for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels. Oh, Bill, I got halfway down on both of these, and then I combined the remnants into an ungodly, smoky, scotchy concoction. This is so good.
I am going to go make a drink with a different whiskey. So I will stop recording in just a second, and then we will come back and we will discuss all things Scotch.
I like Scotch. Scotchy, scotchy, Scotch.